One of the basic concepts in a game like Smite is lane freezing, which we'll go over just the basics here today. It's a pretty complex system that involves lane pushing, lane pulling, lane control, and zoning, but much of the player base doesn't seem to practice much in the way of basics lane freezing. So what am I talking about here? Lane freezing in the simplest terms is keeping the lane, specifically the minion wave, in one spot. And you can do this mostly simply by just last hitting and not pushing the lane further than it needs to go. This is most easily accomplished in AD gods, but any god can do it, really. What you see here is I'm just last hitting whenever possible. I could be attacking the minions at any point. I could be pushing this wave much harder than I needed to. Lane freezing accomplishes two things. First off, by keeping my lane froze right here, all of my minions that die, the EXP and gold from them are denied to any enemy gods that aren't currently in the lane. Simply put, if they're not here, they don't get that experience. And by not pushing the wave, my minions are dying quicker because there's more enemy minions to kill them with. The second thing it's accomplishing is it's keeping the lane in a very specific point, or, basically wherever you want it to be. Right here it's in the center of the lane, but it could be further back if necessary. This lets you control where the lane fights are going to be, whether they're going to be closer towards your tower or closer towards the enemy tower, which can be very powerful for ganks and protecting yourself from ganks. Like in this situation right here, you're pushing the tower. It's okay to attack the enemy minion wave as much as humanly possible because the tower is going to do the work for you. You're going to be attacking the enemy tower for damage, and it's going to be killing your minions while the enemy god isn't in the lanes. So let's have some more practical examples here, some in-game examples of lane freezing in use. Right here we have a Vimana who has a enemy Zeus pushed up to his tower. He doesn't really have any need to push his lane up any further than it is. In fact, if he had pushed his lane any further by not last hitting, he would be fighting this enemy creep wave closer to the enemy tower, perhaps even underneath it, which is very hard for a melee god. Like Thor here, he comes into lane. He does not see any of the opposing enemy gods, so he has no idea where they are. They could be setting up for a gank. They could be, right around that bush there, and he doesn't have his lane partner with him. So by last hitting, he is freezing the minion wave at this point right here. This keeps him safer from enemy ganks because he's simply closer to his tower. He has less distance he needs to retreat in case the enemy gods do show up. Once you see here that his lane partner shows up and they start just attacking the entire minion wave, as you usually see most players do when they're free in the lane, their own minion wave starts pushing up much further. And you can see how big of a difference it makes. In this next example here, we have a Xbalanque. He's coming into the lane. It's right at the beginning of the game, and the enemy gods are nowhere to be seen. He has no reason to push his lane up any harder than just last hitting. By doing this, you see that his very front part of his minion waves, the melee creeps, they're almost completely dead by the time the enemy gods show up. If he had been attacking full force the moment he got into a lane, fewer of the enemy minions would have been alive, and that means they do less damage to his wave, meaning the enemy gods would get more XP when they show up finally in the lane. That is one of the advantages of freezing your lane. Here we have the same game with Wukong further on in the match, and he comes into the lane and there's no enemy gods, but he just goes whole hog. He just auto-attacks, and auto-attacks. You'll notice now that when he and his teammate attack the wave, it'll push the wave much further, much faster. And by doing this and not freezing the lane, where the two minion waves meet and where they attack at are going to get further and further into the enemy part of the wave. They're not last hitting, they're auto-attacking freely, and you'll even see Wukong here, he'll actually use his overhead slam to finish off clearing this wave. So the end result is you have this large minion wave pushing forward, so when Xbalanque shows up back into lane, these minions, a good portion of them, could have been dead. Not only could the lane been back further towards their tower, but this Xbalanque is going to get all this experience that could have been denied to him. This is the power of lane freezing. It gives you gold, it gives you experience, and it denies your enemies gold and experience. It's a big part of the game, and we don't see a lot of the player base doing it right now. So for someone just learning the basics of lane freezing in Smite, what you simply need to remember is if you have the enemy gods zoned out in an area where they're not getting experience from your minions dying, or if they're simply not in the lane at all, you need to make a very serious decision as to whether you're going to freeze the lane by only last hitting the minions, enemy minions, or if you're going to push the lane. If you're going to push towers, if you're going to attack, if you're going to use your minion wave offensively, obviously you don't want to freeze the lane. But in any other situation, there are many benefits to freezing the lane. You stay further back towards your tower, makes it easier for you to gank and your teammates to gank. It makes it harder for your enemies to gank you. It is both an offensive and a defensive tool, and by learning when to freeze and how to freeze, you'll get more gold, more experience, and simply you'll do better at Smite.